Hi, it's Chris Watkin here, and I'm joined by letting agent extraordinaire Sam Watterson, who works in Leeds, in West Yorkshire, and he has an extremely interesting story about how he set up a lettings agency, how it all went belly up, and then he came back Phoenix-like. We're going to talk about all the lessons that he's learnt. So you got boys and girls out there in estate and letting agency land can learn from his mistakes, but also learn from his triumphs as well. Sam, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. We've known each other for a good 8 years, 7 or 8 years, and I've seen you on your journey. What I want to do is find out what the hell you decided to get into property and estate lettings and estate agency. So you were born in 1980,
Yep.
so you're just over 41, 42 years old.
Yep, 41.
There you go, you don't look it, mate. Did you want to be in the property game when you were at school?
The honest answer is no. I always had a flair for business and entrepreneurship. I was the kid that sold the sweets on the school bus to make a few coins, and I always had an interest in money.
Where did that come from? Your parents,
Just
grandparents?
instinct. Neither of my parents are business minded or entrepreneurial. It was just an instinct really that was in me that I was interested in money. I've always been more numerate than literate at school. Just did really well at maths. Wasn't so interested in English. So I always had a burning desire to get into business or to have my own business. And I think that was cemented when I went to college after my GCSEs and did business studies A-level. So academically, I always struggled with typical subjects because they struggled to hold my attention. But then when I did business studies, it was almost like the teacher was telling me things I already knew, and it just seemed like common sense. So I think at that point I realised that I probably had a natural ability for business, the mechanics of business and what made them work. For years I thought about what business I was going to set up. I had all these crazy ideas.
You must have left college at 18.
So I went from Nottingham College to Leeds University
Okay.
to do a degree in business. So I did business and IT, which was how businesses apply IT to make them better, which as you go through my journey, you'll see that that's flowed all the way through and put me where I am today. So I had loads of crazy ideas, but I'd never really had anything that jumped out at me as something I wanted to go into business with and throw myself into.
So is that a 3-year course or a 4-year course at Leeds?
I did 3 years
Okay.
studies.
And what did you do as soon as you came out of Leeds University?
So when I finished uni, I worked in bars, nightclubs, also did promotions. So I did a lot of agency work, worked self-employed, and did that for a few years. I then went to work into more formal sales, got a job with Rent-A-Kill as a sales rep. Did that for about 6 months, I think it was. And at that same time, I teamed up with a guy to buy a house. So, everyone was sort of getting their first jobs, getting some money and getting on the property ladder. So we bought a house that needed work. And then in our evenings and weekends, we did all the refurb and then moved into the house. And that was kind of when the penny dropped that you could buy a house, add value to it, and then realise that value.
When you were working for Rent-A-Kill and other self-employed roles, was that need to want to run your own business still there, but you just didn't find a home for it?
Yeah, I think it was always there, but it was just the idea wasn't. So the desire was there. And as a young man in my early 20s, I knew the time wasn't right, but I always knew that's what I wanted to do. So what we did with that first house was after 6 months, we refinanced it. We'd increased the value by 20,000 and we'd spent 7 on it. So I thought if we can increase the value of a house by 10,000 just part-time, what could we do more often? So I bought another house with a friend that we rented out as a buy-to-let, and that's when I made the decision to leave employment at that point and do property full-time.
What year was that?
2006.
Okay.
So between 2006 and 2007, I bought another 3 properties.
Okay.
Just did them up, rented them out, and that's what I wanted to do full-time.
You wanted to be a full-time landlord?
I wanted to be a full-time property developer. So the idea was buy the house, add value, refinance it, move on to the next one. And then what happened when I was on property number 5, I was midway through the refurb, and this was the start of 2008.
Oh,
so
dear.
everyone who knows what happened in 2008 the credit crunch, and I just remember hearing on the radio about how mortgages had dried up. So what I would have planned to do is, after 6 months, refinance onto a different mortgage and then pay off the refurb costs. What actually happened was I couldn't do that. So I went back into employment, back into sales, which is where I was at 2008. And what I found was, for 2.5 years, I worked for a number of different sort of business-to-business companies doing field sales.
Yep.
The most recent was a property services company called VPS, and they were a clean and clear company. So our clients were social housing providers, housing associations.
Okay. Did you still have your properties, the other properties?
Yes. So for 2.5 years, I worked as a full-time sales rep while managing 5 properties that I rented out. And it was such a nightmare dealing with tenants, not dealing with tenants as in personally, just you finish a long day at work and there's a leaking toilet, or someone's moving out, you need to do viewings. And I just found it was very, very sort of hard to do while managing a full-time job. And it kind of made me realise that as a letting agent, although you can do the job yourself as a landlord, if you've got a full-time job, you would probably really appreciate.
Do you think by being a landlord yourself, it made you appreciate what a landlord goes through and why they do need a letting agent?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think what happened with me was I was doing all the repairs myself, I was doing everything basically, and I was good at it. Don't get me wrong, I rented out my first house quite easy and I had a knack for it. And I was really good at the sales side, so advertising the properties, the inquiries, doing the viewings. But what I wasn't so good at or didn't enjoy was the hands-on maintenance. So the way my business started really was I met a guy in the local area who was a handyman. And I said, right, I want you to do all my repairs because you'll do them better than me and I don't enjoy it. And what I had was I was paying him £200-300 a month to do all the repairs. And then I felt guilty. Because I was like, right, well, if you're paying someone to do something you don't want to do, why don't you get people to pay you to do something you're good at, i.e. finding the tenants? So I started a house share tenant finding business.
Which is why you're still employed?
This is why I'm still employed, yeah. So I just told a few people that I knew who were landlords, look, if you need any tenants finding, I'll do it, £100 a room, as a way to sort of supplement the money I was spending on the repairs. And that's kind of my first steps into being a letting agent while I was still working full-time.
So this was about 09, 10, around there?
Yeah, around about 2009, I'd started this business, and a friend of mine actually, I'd never thought about setting up a letting agent as a proper business, but a friend of mine who was a landlord had a property that he was halfway through putting in a new bathroom, and then he was going to put tenants in, but he actually went travelling for 4 months. So he just came to me and says, look, I've got the house, I'll go away next week, can you put a bathroom in it for me? Decorate it, put the tenants in and look after it for 4 months until I get back. So then I became a managing agent and I did that, and I realised that actually I really enjoyed that, and I could see that as being a business that I could get into. And I kind of called on a piece of advice that I'd heard from someone when I worked in bars, which was, don't try and invent the new wheel, just do something that is done, but do it better than everybody else. So that's when I sort of said, right, I'm gonna be a letting agent.
And did you ditch the job in straight away, or did you kind of transition through?
So the plan was I got a business partner, and he was gonna finance everything, and that gave me the confidence to know that I could quit my job. And so we'd agreed in the January that I was going to work another 6 months, get another 2 quarters worth of commission payments behind me, and continue the progress part time. And then at the end of June 2010. Is when I handed in my notice, and that was the last time I...
How did you go about choosing a business partner?
It was a friend who was also already running a business. So he was running the family business with his dad, so he had experience. And he just said, look, I'll give you a bit of money to do it. What actually happened was I quit my job at the end of June. I was already making enough money to cover the salary that I'd lost out on, and I had the momentum. He got busy with other things and decided he didn't want to be involved. So I gave him his money back and carried on my own. So I never needed him. I never really needed the money. But what I'd done was I'd had the confidence to take that step to being self-employed, thinking I had the support behind me. In reality, when I had a full day and a full week and a full month of time just to spend on my own business, as opposed to trying to do it evenings and weekends, it was able to flourish. And so July 2010, just before my 30th birthday, was when I became a full-time property professional.
Scared?
Then, if I did that now, with 2 kids and a relationship and being a bit older and wiser, it would probably be quite daunting. But back then it was a case of, right, I've now got 30 days to earn the money that I need to pay my mortgage and pay my bills this month. And then the start of the next month, it was the same and the same and the same.
Did it get any easier?
Yeah and no. I think the first thing that I realised was, and it took me 3 years to realise this, was how seasonal the industry is. So at first it was busy and then it went really quiet and then it started getting busy again. So it was hard during the periods when it was quiet, but that was November, December, January. And what I realised looking back was the peaks and the troughs that we have in rentals. So once I understood that you'd have your quiet periods and your busy periods and knew how to prepare. But I was quite a, brave, courageous, reckless young man.
Okay.
So for me, it was quite exciting waking up in the morning thinking, I don't have a boss, but I need to earn a living. So I would paint student houses, I would do all sorts. I worked for a lot of agencies in Leeds as a subcontractor. So a lot of the big student agencies in student season, because of the sort of peaks and troughs with their own business, they can't have staff all year round. So they'd bring me in on a temporary basis and fill my diary full of viewings and pay me per let. So there was lots of different ways for me to earn a living in the early days.
So the business was going quite well in the early teens, 2010, 11, 12, 13. I think the name of the firm was it Morrison Watts at the time?
Yes, the business was originally Morrison Watts. From 2010 to 2016, it grew pretty rapidly.
Okay, but then something awful happened and you had to sell the business.
So what happened was, I never really had a plan or a direction. It just kind of, the business just took itself however it went. We ended up becoming a student letting agency where we just had a lot of student landlords, a lot of student properties, not by design, just through people we were meeting and where we were located. And I wasn't enjoying it. So because I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't happy inside. I was making a lot of decisions for the wrong reasons. So I was making a lot of bad decisions. I made a lot of good decisions along the way, but the bad decisions sometimes are the ones that weigh you down. And we got through to 2015, 16, and our growth was like rapid. So we were continually having to expand the business, investing in overheads, taking on staff, etc. And I think I was a good salesman, and I've always been good at sales. But then I realised then that I probably wasn't a very good manager or a leader or a business owner.
Okay.
And
we system shit then.
We invested in some better systems, but I spent a lot of time, looking into software, creating a solution for a problem.
Because you were an IT man from university.
Yeah, and what we've got now is really good systems, and what we had then was new systems all the time. So every time we implemented a new system, we were kind of sweeping up from a failure in the previous system. So it wasn't as easy as just going, here's a new system, problem solved. You still had the sort of mess that had been created previously.
So you ended up having a successful business which was growing almost exponentially, turned into a student lettings business, which
Yes.
meant the cash, you were doing all the work at one end of the year and not getting paid to the other end.
Exactly. So we were top loaded. So November, December, we were putting in all our effort, all our expenses, all our investment in marketing, and everything we let then wasn't moving in until the summer. So we were on this like 9-10 month cash flow lag. And because with the overheads are always up front, and then the income that you generate from growing your business sort of comes along 6-12 months later, the business couldn't support itself. And so towards the back end of 2016, I sold the portfolio.
How did it make you feel that this baby that you've grown, you had to sell because you kind of loved the front end, but the back end was...
One thing I learned was when you scale 2 things. You scale your problems and you scale your successes. So if you've got a lot of problems and you get bigger, you just have bigger problems. And that's what we had. We just had a lack of sort of structure and systems that would enable us to scale. So we were almost scaling on weak foundations as opposed to.
And was it still was there anyone else involved in the business in terms of owning the business? Was it all on your shoulders?
So I'd set the business up, it was just me. And for the first year and a half, I worked at home from a spare bedroom. And then I took on a first member of staff. So throughout the first sort of 5-6 years of my journey, I did everything on my own, very isolated, very lonely. Didn't have anyone to bounce any ideas off. And I think it was the sort of structure in the industry that we have now with the Facebook groups and the community wasn't as prevalent then. And I didn't really reach out to people who were doing the same job. You know, now I have loads of contacts and friends who are business owners and letting agents all over the country, and we support each other. Whereas then, I almost saw people as competition, and so I kind of carried the burdens myself. So when it came to decision making, I didn't really have anyone to bounce those off.
Do you think through the power of these Facebook groups that things are better now because you can swap ideas? And
for me personally, I let go of the notion that people were the competition or the enemy.
Well, even if they're in a city 20 miles, 40 miles away?
I didn't really get involved with it, to be honest. So it was only when I set up the new business that I joined the groups and I started engaging and I started getting to know people and I started to realise the value of the community. I started meeting with other business owners in my area and realised that they weren't the competition that they're potential.
Are we talking about other business owners as other letting agents?
Yeah, other letting agents. People who I used to see as being competition.
So not only are you talking to letting agents from around the UK, you're actually building relationships up with what is genuinely your competition.
Yeah. Because I feel so strongly about this, I set up a small network of people a few years ago where we just had a WhatsApp group with business owners just to touch base if anyone's got.
Is that just letting agents?
This was just letting agents, business owners.
In Leeds?
Yorkshire.
Yeah. So you've set up a WhatsApp group for business owners who are letting agents in Yorkshire.
Yeah, and it's nothing major. It's just something where if anyone's got any questions or they want some support, they can just jump in and ask a question. Because I realise the value of leaning on other people in the same position as you.
And does that change your life?
What changed my life really was at the end of 2016. It was funny because I was selling the business. I had a manager who was running it, and I was trying to sort of be the business owner, not getting too involved in the day-to-day. And so I'd agreed a sale with someone, and then the person who was managing it left to take another job. So for 2-3 months while the sale was going through, I had to go back in and run the business. And what I found was that we had Dupics and we had this system. We'd had it for about 6 or 7 months. So I started doing all the day-to-day tasks I hadn't done, and I was like, oh, why have they not done it like this? Why haven't they done it like that? And then I realised that we're just using the systems all wrong, we're just doing everything wrong, and that actually there was a better way of doing it or an easier way. And I kind of almost fell back in love with the job then and fell back in love with my ability at the job. So I was going through this process of selling the business to somebody else and ending up with nothing, but then realising that I was actually a really, really good agent.
So that person that actually left you, because obviously when you're selling the business, people tend to go, they actually made you fall in love back with being a letting agent.
So it's strange. It's almost like as the plane's crashing in flames, I'm realising that I love this. So I was like, I'm going to sell the business and I'm done. But then I realised, actually, you're really good at this. Maybe you should have been more involved instead of relying on other people, and you should set up better systems. You should call upon your experience from, your university days. And we just started using Goodlord as well, another industry supplier. So, we'd only in the last 6 months started using Dupics and started using Goodlord and all these brilliant tools that make life so much easier. So at the end of 2016, start of 2017, I sat down with someone who had just started working with me that year to do the estate agency side of the business. And we had a very frank conversation. We sat in Morrison's cafe and I was like, am I ready to write a CV and look for another job? Is that me? Is that my path? And I says, no. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I went back to, it was like a mental list, all the things that I'd done wrong and all the things that I'd done right. And it was like, if you start again from scratch and you just do all the things that you did right and you don't do all the things you did wrong, what results do you think you'll get?
It's quite a superpower to be self-aware of those issues. And by almost failing, you've because now you're flying.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to agents who are feeling a bit overwhelmed and drowning?
I think sometimes you drown because you try and do too much. you try and say yes to too many people. You know, like we offer what I would say is very good customer service. And we offer very good customer service because when people want something doing, it gets done. Not because we're always on the end of the phone, not because we respond to emails instantly, but because the things that they need doing get done. So if my landlords email me, I might not email them back. I might send it on to a colleague to deal with, but it'll get done. But they then don't have the reliance on me to do it. They get used to dealing with somebody else, and then they take me out of the equation. One thing that I've observed from other people in the industry is you'll have a very good local independent letting agency purely and simply because the business owner is trying to do everything, and that only works to a certain point, but they're not an octopus. And that's the saying I always use. Look, I'm not an octopus. I've got 2 hands, 2 arms, can't do everything. And then they start to not enjoy it. And you see a lot of them sell because they get to a certain point, they don't want to give it away to staff. They don't want to put systems in place for communication, really. So I think if you're struggling, look at your systems, look at your efficiencies, look at your setup. What can you do to become more, just time efficient, so you can spend your time doing the things that are more important than the admin, because it is an admin heavy.
It is, isn't it?
Heavy job.
Because a lot of letting agents they're perfectionists, aren't they? They think someone else can't do the job as well as they can.
Yeah. And it's just about being organised. You know, I'll give you one example. So I've set up a system now where when we sign up a landlord, they fill in a form through our website, which gives us their first name, mobile number, email address, all the information we need. They upload their ID, they upload all their documents, and it goes into one place. So we never have a situation where we're going, oh, where's the landlord's passport? You know, ringing them up, emailing them, can you send us a copy of your passport? We can't find it, because it's on what I call the source of truth. And from an admin point of view, the landlord fills it in. They do the admin. We don't. So our admin staff don't have to spend any time doing that. All we then do is transfer those documents into the relevant place.
So now 2021, 22, I've got a fantastic letting agency in Leeds. You're not just a letting agent, you source properties, you attract landlords, you almost do a one-stop shop for landlords.
Yeah.
What's the future for Sam?
It's probably worth me just looping back to the beginning a little bit and showing how, or sort of explaining how that's influenced where we are today. So originally I bought the house, did the refurb, me personally, and then rented it out. So I always had a real love for the refurb side of things. You know, I get such a kick out of taking a tired house, making it into a really nice family home and people moving in and wearing it. So I was always interested in the refurbs, and then over the years I'd done a few refurbs with people just as we were going, and a couple of times people said, look, you know, I'm trying to buy a house, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I've said, look, give me a couple of grand, I'll find you one. So I always liked the sourcing model. I like the idea that instead of trying to find a landlord who's looking for a letting agent, if you can get them before they've even bought the house, you've got more chance of becoming the agent and being front of the competition. So I'd always liked that model. And in 2019, we were working with quite a large landlord stroke developer who was converting big office blocks into flats. And we had hundreds of, you know, just about 150 units with them in different towns, Hull, Doncaster, Pontefract, places like that, and everything was going really well. But as their business grew and their problems grew, they started moving towards a consolidation model where they would have one agent who would cover everything, and that agent wasn't going to be us. So we were in a position where we were going to lose 50% of our managed portfolio over the course of 6 to 9 months. So I was sort of in a situation where I was like, right, I'm going to lose a hell of a lot of money each month, but I'm going to gain a hell of a lot of time. What's the best way to reinvest that time into the business?
Were you tempted to try and take that, or because of the lessons you'd learned in the past, you thought, actually, let it go? It's not me.
Yeah, what the problem we had with when you were working with one client who has such a big percentage of your business is they call the shots. So you hear it a lot about people's visions and values. Like my values and my visions were completely different to theirs. So my business was almost being taken in a direction that somebody else wanted it to be taken into, and I didn't like that, and we didn't have control. So it was an opportunity for me to kind of move away from that and regain control of my own business.
It must have taken some balls to do.
It killed me. I had 4 months of not eating. I lost 2 stone, really bad anxiety, thinking, look, the business is going under. I've already been through a situation where I nearly lost everything. So I was just like, this isn't a good situation. This is going wrong. And I just decided that if I wanted to sort of replace it as quick as I could, or save the business really, to do property sourcing full time. And so I had my team. I said, look, you guys are looking after the portfolio we've got on our existing landlords. I'm going to go off and get this sourcing thing going. And that was 2019. So between 2019 and today, we've become more of a property investment business. We stopped doing estate agency typical sales in 2018, which is a story for another day. Well, we can talk about it now. And yes, I went full into sourcing. So now we do sourcing, any refurbs on properties we need to refurbish, and then lettings and management. So I use that as a really good way to meet new landlords, to fill our pipeline of future managed properties, but also to take on better quality properties. Because what I'd found was in the Morrison Watts days, I found a house for a guy, refurbed it, and then we put tenants in, and it was a student house. It was the first house we let that year. We had absolutely brilliant rents. It went straight away to some great tenants, no hassles, no maintenance. So it was the easiest property that we had to manage, bringing in quite a lot of money, and the investor got great returns. So overall, the experience was so much better.
Well, in a separate video, we're going to help the boys and girls out there in estate letting agency land on how to become a sourcing agent. And I know you're going to give an awful lot away.
Yeah.
We could probably talk about the fact you got out of estate agency another time. I don't think it's appropriate for this video.
Yeah.
But basically, through your ups and downs, your trials and tribulations, you've realised that you have self-awareness of knowing what you're good at, what you're bad at, realising that it's all about delegation, having a great team and doing something you're passionate about, and don't let clients move your culture and values in a different direction. Would you say you're much happier now?
100%. I'm so much happier now, and probably because
And you can see, if you don't mind me saying, because we've known each other for
Yeah.
9 years, if you roll the clock back 4 or 5 years, you were quite. Now you've seen a little bit more. Quite a lot
it was even with the new business, it was up, down, and then it was kind of up, and now we're in control. I think that's the most important thing.
And how's having a partner and a little one change your life?
I mean, the kids are brilliant because they give you a reason to sort of get up and go out every day, and they make me feel accomplished that I'm working hard to give them a good life. I also feel grateful that when we went through the real sort of difficult periods in my life, I had the support of my partner, but also it was just before the kids were. I mean, my daughter was like 1 or 2. My son wasn't even born yet, so it was out the way early before they were, more aware of it. When I was younger, I was single. I was living in my house, renting out the other rooms to people, trying to develop a business while also partying a little bit too much, enjoying life.
Well, Sam, thank you for your time today. I look forward to seeing you, and hopefully in the years to come, you can come back on the Watkin sofa. We'll see how you